The United Nations has now formally released its ruling on the situation of the WikiLeaks founder, Julian Assange. Now, Mr. Assange had sought political asylum in Ecuador's London embassy, and that was to avoid being extradited to Sweden for questioning over sexual assault allegations which he does deny. In the UN's legal opinion on this case, it says that Mr. Assange has been arbitrarily detained and has accused the Swedish prosecutors of a lack of diligence. Both the Swedish and the UK governments have rejected the findings already. Well, our correspondent Richard Lister is outside the Ecuadorian embassy in central London. Richard, certainly in terms of a sort of sense of moral victory, Mr. Assange must be feeling pretty good. They're also offering or suggesting he should be compensated.
Yes, it's certainly a boost for his campaign. I think that the UN has ruled in the way that it has, very firmly on his side. No wiggle room there, really. But it is, as you say, I think, a moral victory more than a practical one, because certainly the British and Swedish governments don't believe that there is any legal authority in this report for them to change the way they've been dealing with this situation. Despite the fact that the UN body has decided that Mr. Assange has had his liberty deprived since December 2010, when he was first arrested by police here in London. The British government says there is a European arrest warrant in place, and that means that the government is legally obliged to send Mr. Assange to Sweden to face questioning about these sexual assault claims which he denies.
Do we know then, Richard, what happens next? I mean, after 3.5+ years inside the embassy, does Mr. Assange have a plan now?
Well, I think we're looking at a continuation of the status quo, really. Mr. Assange had said before this report was formally released that if it sided with him, he would expect to be given his passport and free passage to Ecuador to take up this offer of political asylum. But obviously that is clearly not going to happen. The Foreign Office was very emphatic today, saying this changes nothing. It says it doesn't even recognise the concept of political asylum. It didn't sign up to the convention supporting it. So the Foreign Office was very clear. It is going to contest the findings of this UN body, and even if it didn't, it still says they carry no legal weight, and it is business as usual. If Mr. Assange chooses to step out from the Ecuadorian embassy, the Metropolitan Police here in London have said very clearly he will be arrested.
Richard, thank you very much indeed. I just hesitate there because a line has just come from the British Foreign Secretary, Philip Hammond, saying that Assange is a fugitive from justice, and the UN panel report on him is, in Mr. Hammond's words, ridiculous. Stay with us here on BBC World News.